15 towers, 152 shrines, 36 chasms, 58 wells, 194 cave entrances, 147 bubble gems, 81 Hudson signs, 120 light route, every single named location, 509 compendium entries, 228 recipes, 22 character profiles, 23 main quests, 60 side adventures, 139 side quests, 18 memories, 3 travel medallions, a fully upgraded battery, 12 schema stones, 34 Yiga schematics, 31 old maps, 20 sage's wheels, every pony point, every armor, every unique weapon, every boss medal, all hearts, all stamina, 1,000 Koroks seeds, 2 playthroughs, over 250 hours, and a partridge in a pear tree. I did everything in The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. So now, let's talk about everything. Hi, I'm Klubb, and welcome to Klubb's Hub. Alright, right up front, let's name a few discrepancies. You see that asterisk on everything in the title and thumbnail? That's because there were a few things I either had zero desire of doing, or it was completely pointless to even do it. For starters, there is no reason to fight every Gloomhand and Lionel in the game because the game doesn't reward you for it, and there's no tracker in the game indicating whether or not you've defeated one already. Second, while I did grab every in-game fabric that you're rewarded, I wasn't able to grab every single amiibo fabric because I'm missing a few. And the last thing, and this one is probably the biggest, I didn't go through and upgrade every single armor to level 4. That just sounds needlessly unfun and grindy, and I had no intention of doing it from the very beginning. So go ahead and tell me in the comments of how much of a failure I am for not actually 100%ing the game. I really don't care. With those out of the way, it's also worth noting that this is my second Tears of the Kingdom video, with the first one being a surface layer spoiler-free review. Since I already made that, I see no point in repeating my thoughts on things like the abilities you can use in the game and enemies and so on and so forth. For the most part, this video is going to be about everything I didn't talk about in great detail in the first video. Like this guy! Hope you're ready for a 3,000 word intermission about this one Goron. In all seriousness, let's start from the moment you're first given that beautiful title card. My first thoughts as I was exploring the Great Sky Island was actually slight disappointment. I was bummed that the structure of the opening part of the game was practically the same as Breath of the Wild. To be fair, I'm not really sure if they should have done it a different way. They give you all these fun tools to mess around with, and if you don't have a smaller playground to play with those tools, you'd be completely lost if they just gave them all to you and pushed you onto land down below. So in the end, it didn't take me long to get over this super small bit pick, as I explored everything the Great Sky Island had to offer. And that issue continued to get smaller and smaller once I jumped from the sky and landed in the world. Let's get the ugly things out of the way first. No, not him. We'll talk about him in a bit. Let's talk about the performance issues. We all know that the Switch is not the beefiest console ever, since its entire purpose is to be carried around. But we've also seen that it's entirely possible to make a beefy handheld. Not totally Nintendo's fault, since they had to make this game run on their OG hardware, but man, this game does not run well. Breath of the Wild had quite a few problems in select locations, but this game chugs all the time. Now, it's not as bad as something like, I don't know, Pokemon, where it felt like the game was running at a crisp 15 frames per second, but this game will dip from 30 to 15 enough to just drive me insane. I don't need a game to be 60 FPS or whatever. It's nice, but not required. What I do ask in a game is for it to run smoothly, and this game doesn't. Tears also suffers from some pretty egregious pop-in as well. Now, I've become pretty numb to most pop-ins since it's in practically every game, but when you're in the depths, entire models are literally swapping in and out before your very eyes, and it just doesn't look good. Nintendo, I'm not asking you to make the next PS5 equivalent game, I just want to play a game that doesn't feel like it could easily run on the Xbox 360. Regardless of how it runs, the game is absolutely gorgeous, something it and Breath of the Wild's best trait shares. I can just get completely lost in the large landscapes and sprawling forests as I explore every inch. So let's explore every inch together and dissect all the things you can find and do, starting with the most heavily advertised, the Sky Islands. As I had said earlier, you start the game on one of these Sky Islands called the Great Sky Island, and it's basically the equivalent to the Great Plateau in Breath of the Wild. 4 required shrines, playground for new tools and mechanics, etc, etc. However, there are more Sky Islands spread across Hyrule, varying in height and sizes. You have diving minigame islands, boss islands, dungeons, dungeons, shrine islands, and a combination puzzle shrine island. With the puzzle shrine islands, they usually consist of you finding a stone and bringing it back to the base of the shrine to allow you entry. And these type of islands take up about 70% of all the Sky Islands, which, I'm gonna be honest, kinda sucks. Nintendo advertised the exploration of the sky to death, and when I finally got around to actually exploring them, I was extremely disappointed. There were a few puzzle islands that were different that I actually enjoyed. There was one with low gravity and light puzzles, and then there was, hold on. I can't find it. Yeah. There was one where you have to like rotate some pieces on the island, and that was pretty neat. Yeah, I'm struggling here. It's also disappointing that you'd think the thing we saw the most of from the game non-stop over years would be cool to explore, and it ended up being the worst part. It's all a bit unfortunate, but the best thing to come out of the Sky Islands was the occasional reward of giving you an old map, which is the game's way of nudging you to go check out the not as advertised and far superior depths. This was one of my favorite parts of the game. Just like kids playing the craft, I yearned for the mines. Something about this area is so calming yet completely terrifying at the same time. Exploring what seems to be a never-ending darkness and slowly lighting up the entire underground is oddly satisfying in a creepy sort of way. I find it fascinating that Nintendo shows almost none of the depths off, and I think that was the right call, because most people, including me, were blown away to find out that there wasn't just 2 layers to the map, but 3. And that third expands over the entire map of Hyrule, essentially doubling the amount of areas you can explore. Oh, this game also runs on 16 gigs, by the way. Did you know that? That means that the recorded footage I took of this game at 552 gigs is 34 times bigger than the game itself. It blows me away. Sorry, got a little sidetracked. If it wasn't already obvious, did you know that this map is the inverted version of Hyrule? Valleys are cliffs, cliffs are valleys, rivers are gigantic walls, and the locations of light roots are where the shrines are. Large mining facilities are where towns are, and so on and so on. I like to think of this world as something akin to the Dark World in A Link to the Past, which I honestly think was the intent of what they were trying to do. I've heard several people say that there's nothing to do down here or no reason to be down here, and to an extent, you're correct. In my second playthrough of the game, I only went down here 3 or 4 times, and that was just to complete 3 main quests and 1 side quest, so if you really wanted to, you could completely omit the entire area. But where's your sense of adventure? There's so many goodies inside adventures down here. There's weapons that aren't decayed, which give you higher attack stats. There are posts to collect, which you can turn in at hidden bargaining statues to get items or armor. There's even one statue that will give you a free heart or stamina upgrade once you help them out. There's also Zonite down here as well, which is practically the only way you can find it. You can then use that Zonite to get crystals that extend your battery for all your Zonite devices. Then you've got a ton of boss fights down here, like rematches with bosses from dungeons and new and creepy bosses lurking in the dark, and of course a fight and side adventure with the great Master Koga. I love this side adventure, man. It was such a great idea to put him down here after we pushed him down in Breath of the Wild. All of his fights are so kooky and fun, with him using the different Zonite devices against you, and in turn for fighting him away, you'll be getting and finding Yiga schematics and schemastones, which are blueprints for you to easily create all sorts of different Zonite devices like portable cannon mining machines or some sort of vehicle. But let's be honest, you all saw someone using this hover bike, made it, and then never went back. There are so many different types of vehicles that you can get around in this world, but once you've got this bike, that's it. No more creativity. It's bike time. Reason being is that 1, it requires almost no battery, 2, it's easy to control, and 3, you can carry just about anything you need, including Koroks. If you're smart, unlike me, you can put a bright bloom on the front of it so you can actually see down here. A fact I didn't think to do until way later in my mapping of the depths. Now, while the bike is super handy for completionist stuff, I have quite a few issues with it when it comes to doing the main quest stuff, but we'll talk about that when we get around to it. But since you have all these Zonite devices to build wacky machines, it makes stuff like the horse completely irrelevant, which is really sad because as many problems as I had with Breath of the Wild, I really enjoyed just riding my horse around and just soaking up the land of Hyrule. A thing you really can't do since you just fly all over it. Maybe I'll try to do a Zonite-less run at some point. sounds pretty fun. Going back to the horses, they did try to make them sort of relevant with the inclusion of pony points, a reward system for visiting stables, catching and taming horses, stable side quests, and resting at the stables. While I think the thought of a reward program is nice for the stables, after you get the towing harness, the rest of the rewards kinda suck. Most of them have to deal with styling your horse or getting additional slots, but let's be honest, how many of you really cared about any of this? From an aesthetic and nostalgic point of view, I get it. Horsey is a good boy who deserves love. But the second you get on as much as a 10-degree incline that's not on a road, your horse gives up and you just abandon him on the side of the road. But something is better than nothing, I suppose, when it comes to the pony points. Speaking of a nostalgic point of view though, where's Kass? Has anybody seen him? Or is it Kass? It might be Kass. Where's the bird with the accordion from Breath of the Wild? I couldn't believe that they got rid of my dear sweet accordion playing bird. He was one of my favorite NPCs. I guess I can't complain too much. They did keep most of the characters from the last game, like Purah, Robbie, Paya, Teba, King Dorfin, and somehow Impa? How is she still alive? I mean, it's good to see you, Impa, looking as young as ever. But with keeping a lot of the original characters, they also added in a ton of great new ones. Pin, the reporter of the Lucky Clover Gazette, Violin, the maestro, and the rest of the Stable Trotter band traveling around from stable to stable. Cece, the fashionista from Hateno Village. Addison, the devoted follower and sign holder-upper of Hudson. Yona, the Zora from Another Domain and bride-to-be of Sidon. Joshua, the Sheikah assistant to Purah. Koltin, the even weirder Bubbul-obsessed brother of Kilton. Taro, the leader of the Zonai survey team. This guy. And so many, many more. I have no idea where any of them came from or how they got here, but who cares? They're great, and I think they make a fine addition to the Tears of the Kingdom world. However, I am a bit miffed that some of these characters don't remember me. It's so odd. It seems like they just flipped a coin on every NPC from Breath of the Wild to see whether or not they'd remember you. Most of the main NPCs will always remember you, like Hudson or Sidon or so on, but the other big ones, like Hetsu of all people, don't remember me. You're telling me you don't remember me bringing your big butt 900 Koroks seeds and watching you dance for every single one? How dare you? Bolson, you don't remember me either? How? I'm the guy that brought you 300 bundles of wood or whatever in exchange for a house. Are you going to forget me after I help you rid this town of pirates and rebuild it from the ground up? What about you? Are you going to forget me too? That pirate thing is real, by the way. Throughout the whole game, you hear whispers of pirates invading Lurelin Village, and I don't know why, but I was expecting, like, actual pirates. But no, it was just bokoblins on a boat, which is fine because the actual mission starts after you take care of the pirates. You see, this is one of the very many side adventures in the game. Not side quest, side adventure. The biggest difference between the two is the fact that side adventures are longer, more fleshed out, and engaging side quests that usually lead to a bigger reward. This one in particular being that you can help Bolson rebuild the town back from the ground up, and your reward being that everything in the village is now free since you are the village's savior. And honestly, pretty good reward, making this my ideal spot for staying at inns since it was free. But you also get this nice micro story about how villagers look up to you and praise you for being such a kind soul for helping them out in Zelda's absence. This is the key to these side adventures, and I highly recommend them, if not for the story and feels alone. But sometimes the reward is enough to keep you going. Just to name a few of my favorites, we've got the Stable Trotters playing some beautiful music to coax the great fairies out, which in turn help you upgrade all your armor. Then we have the Lucky Clover Gazette with Best Boy Pin helping you follow rumors about Zelda's disappearance, with the reward being this awesome suit that prevents you from slipping on wet surfaces when you upgrade it. We've got the new infiltration into the Yiga clan that requires you to find all the pieces of the suit so that you can learn and master the Earthquake ability and get the Lightning Helm. There's a quest in my favorite town, Hateno Village, that has you helping the fashionista Cece and the mayor settle a political debate, with your reward being that you get to put your hood down. Honestly, this is the best reward. And then my other favorite town, Terrytown, helping Hudson and his daughter say goodbye after she has to move to Gerudo Town, gaining the ability of my heart hurting. And this goofy shield I made. You also gain access to building your own house, which completely caught me off guard. I was not expecting this game to throw something like that at me. First mining and now crafting houses? Huh. Anyway, this weird and unique feature was a fun addition to the game, but honestly, I wish it was a little more in depth. I appreciate it's here, but it's a bit limiting. My house ended up looking like a crack house. It's not a crack house. It's a crack home. But the game didn't just stop with side adventures, it of course had its fair share of side quests as well. And while a vast majority of the side quests are your typical fare, you know, give me a horse, give me apples, take a picture, braid me acorns, kill that monster, dig up the bones of an ancient colossal beast, cure my grandma of cancer, you know, that typical stuff. Most of them will yield you either rupees or pony points, which are fine, I guess, but the really good side quests are the ones that can lead you to some really helpful armor, or even some unique and nostalgic weapons. But nothing can top the quest of doing all 152 shrines. While Breath of the Wild had 120 shrines, Tears of the Kingdom upped their shrine count, keeping 120 on the ground and 32 in the sky. And while I was still pretty impressed with the shrines in Breath of the Wild, I was blown away with the type of puzzles they were coming up with in Tears of the Kingdom. I'm sure everyone saw this shrine going around on the internet, but this physics reaction is an absolutely massive flex when it comes to a physics engine. You, yourself, build and attach this bridge to this car by yourself, however you want, then you turn on the car, and the physics of the car pulls the bridge taut enough for you to walk across. That's absolutely bananas, and this is all over the game, and that's what makes it so special. It's entirely grounded in reality, something that comes naturally as we play the game. So much so that I didn't even notice how insane of a feat Nintendo had accomplished as I just casually walked across the bridge. In most games, we've become so used to just pushing a button to do something. The limitation with a video game is usually the imagination of the video game designer. But for Tears of the Kingdom, for the most part, that limitation is removed and the hurdle is then your own imagination. Because of that, there are so many dumb ways to solve puzzles in these shrines. You think to yourself, I wonder if I did that the dev intended way. Trust me, whatever it is that you did, it was what they wanted. And I think that's one of the most beautiful and terrifying things about this game, but we'll talk about the terrifying part in a bit. Back to talking about the shrines in general. One of the biggest issues with Breath of the Wild shrines is that a majority of them were either fighting shrines, which always felt like a cop-out to just design a puzzle, or they were a prize shrine where you just walk in and that's it. Thankfully, the fighting shrines are gone for the most part, minus the very few tutorial shrines that are kind of similar. Although I believe their actual equivalent is what I like to call the naked and afraid shrines, where you have to finish the shrine without any of your gear. Kinda like Eventide Island in Breath of the Wild. These are way better than any of the fighting shrines from Breath of the Wild because they're not just flat land with one enemy. They're always completely new terrain with different items that require you to come up with clever ways of surviving. These seem to terrify a lot of people, but I thrived in them. Then there's the prize shrines. Sadly, they're back. Before the rebrand, I had a video talking about Breath of the Wild, and I'd like to take a snippet of that because it still applies here. Not to mention that the ones that were just reward dungeons for solving the puzzle in order to get inside, I don't want to go to a dungeon just to be handed a prize. I go to them to solve puzzles and get my teeth kicked in, and then get the prize. Now, to be fair, I think some of these are a little better. I know that the whole point of the prize shrines is that you just did the puzzle part, and in some cases it does feel like that. There's this one where you go through this really long and cool minecart ride over lava fighting monsters, and then there's some that are just in a cave. Cool. Now, technically that cave has gloom hands in it, but they're so easy to avoid in that cave particularly, and my brain just goes, ooh, puzzle, priorities, only to be disappointed that there's no puzzle. Outside of those type of shrines though, we've also got ones that are just weird and fun, like this one that's literally a Jenga puzzle, and another one that looks like a prize shrine at first, only to get the rug pulled out from under you as soon as you get close enough. I love these shrines so much. Honestly, one of my favorite things I look forward to when I play this game are Breath of the Wild. But doing these shrines has also taught me how dumb the internet is. I saw so many people having trouble with this shrine in particular, and I immediately knew what to do. I don't know how it couldn't have been more obvious. You literally walk in and are presented with this. But after all of this, all of these shrines, what's your prize? In Breath of the Wild, you get a tunic based on the game, so maybe you get like a Zonai tunic, or maybe you get like the Master Cycle Zero back. Oh, it could be anything. What is it? What is it? Damn it, they turned Link into a furry. Yeah, I don't vibe with this. As soon as I got it, I literally laughed out loud and exclaimed, what in the world is this? I just couldn't believe it. I wasn't about to run around the game looking like this. From what I understand, this is supposed to be the figure we see on the tapestry in Breath of the Wild, and it very well may be, but like, I don't like it. I don't want it. You're gonna You're just gonna go back in my bag. But that's not the only underwhelming reward. We also have the very many fabrics you can obtain in the game. You remember the dye shop from Breath of the Wild? Well, now you can adjust your paraglider to have a multitude of different patterns and pictures on it. And to be honest, this isn't that bad of a reward. It's definitely something, but it's the reward for literally everything in the game. And after you find one you really like, the odds of you switching back, or at least for me, is very low. Not to mention that most of the really good ones are obtained through the amiibos. That's where I got this awesome Twilight Mirror fabric that I continue to use through the entirety of my playthrough. But how do you get those other ones that aren't attached to amiibos? I'm glad you asked, Plaid.
Yeah, sure, whatever you say, man. Wait a minute, I don't remember asking you any questions.
The first thing that comes to mind are Addison signs. I briefly mentioned him earlier, but Addison is a guy you can find holding up 81 signs around Hyrule for Hudson construction. He wants nothing more than for the signs to stand on their own, but our man Addison just can't wrap his brain around the laws of gravity. So we have to help him out by grabbing a random assortment of building material laying around and prop up the sign so he can nail it down to the ground. Every time you help, he gives you 20 rupees, a meal, and a single random item. Pretty helpful early game, but as the game goes on, you kinda just ignore him. For helping him out with all of them, you get a fabric and he goes to relax and listen to the stable trotters. Neat. Oh, and you can totally just cheese all of these by putting a hoverstone underneath them. Wow, that's a nifty tip, but are there any other needless things that reward you with fabrics? That's a fantastic question, Gino.
What?
Up next is the Compendium. It works pretty much the same as the Compendium in Breath of the Wild. Take a picture of literally everything you see so you can track it if you want, only to realize that you aren't even halfway done finding everything, and then you just blow all your money on the rest of the picture so you don't have to waste your time. The fabric for this one is actually kind of nice though. Still doesn't beat the Twilight Mirror. Ha! The Compendium doesn't seem like it's really worth your time. Are there any other things you can do in the game that aren't a waste of time? Yes, actually. Wow, that was a great question, Jam.
I don't remember asking that, but thanks for thinking of me.
Caves, baby! There was definitely speculation of a cave system when the first trailers were coming out, and I, along with everyone else, was super excited to see if that'd become reality. Now, we technically had caves in Breath of the Wild, but not to the extent that we have them here. There are some caves in this game that feel like they go on forever. Caves have a few purposes. Some will have weapons, or enemies to fight, or even puzzles sometimes. You might even be lucky and find some really good armor in there. But the main consistent thing to be looking for in every cave is the Bubbul Frog. Finding one of these guys and taking his gem is what makes the cave count as completed. The point of these gems is to give him to Kilton's brother, Koltin, who has a dream of turning into a Satori. Kinda reminds me of the devil guy from Skyward Sword wanting to be a human. Anyways, Koltin is under the impression that if he eats all of the Bubbul gems, that he'll turn into a Satori. So he wants us to hunt them down and bring them to him. Something that is made easier by the fact that you can lay food at these cherry blossoms and an actual Satori will come out and show you where all the caves are. Is he wanting us to murder his species? I never really thought about that. In exchange for finding Koltin the gems, he gives you a slew of items, whether it's armor to keep us disguised, rupee padded armor, or monster parts. However, after he runs out of items to trade with you, he just expects you to go out and find the rest with no reward. To be honest though, I kinda wanted to see if it'd work, if he would actually turn into a Satori, and that was kind of reward enough. You do actually get a reward though for finding all of them. That's right, you guessed it. Another fabric I'm not gonna use. But that's not the only thing you'll find in caves. Sometimes you'll find bosses as well. Bosses? Really? Do you only find them in caves? Oh no, don't ask such a stupid question, Owen.
I didn't ask you anything.
There are bosses everywhere, on all 3 layers of Hyrule. After I had fought them all, I had completely lost count of how many I defeated, which made it difficult to track whether I had done them all or not. But I did. First is the Hinox. Really no different from Breath of the Wild. Shoot him in the eye, take out his kneecaps, tell him he better have the money next time, you know, the usual. Next are the Taluses. These actually have a little variation. While there are some in the depths that will inflict gloom damage, a type of damage that temporarily lowers your heart count, there are some that are on Hyrule that have Bokoblin Camp Station on them. And I'm not gonna lie, at first I was a little intimidated by this. But after I learned that you can just ascend to the top, it actually made this variant easier than their usual usual encounters. The last return to form boss from Breath of the Wild is Molduga. Again, nothing new here. Throw bombs to get his attention and then kablooey. No more Molduga. They still pack heck of a punch though, so maybe make sure you're a little prepared before jumping in the sand. Now it's time to talk about the new encounters. First up, Broks. These creatures only reside in the depths and functionally work the same as Taluses. And by that I mean they have rocks on their backs and you gotta take them all out to kill it. You can also treat it like a Molduga or a Dodongo from Ocarina of Time by throwing a bomb in its inhaling mouth to stun it temporarily. Alternatively, these things love bright bloom seeds, so you can also just throw one down and while it's munching on it, you can get on its back and wail away. You can also shoot it in the eye to stun it and you know, now that I think about it, these things sure are weak to a lot of things. I kinda just got in the habit of hitting it with a Dazzle Fruit, and that seemed to work best more than anything else. Moving on though, next we have the Flux, a Zonai structure made completely of Zonai cubes. I love these fights because it's such a clever way of using your new abilities. You can use the Ultra Hand to tear him apart, or you can use Rewind to get up higher, or sometimes, if he's low enough, you can also use Ascend. Each phase requires you to use a different ability, and it's so clever. Or you can just take off its legs and arms so it can't hit you. It's funny to watch it struggle. Up next, the return of a terrifying yet classic enemy, the Gleeok. Talk about a glow up. We went from this to this. These things are tough. Each one you fight has a specific type of element that it's going to use against you, and you have to be ready to take down its heads with an element that counters the one it's using. I usually would just use key size to hone in on its head because my aim sucks, but I'm sure there was probably a much easier way to take them down. I love these fights. They're so epic and the right kind of difficulty, and if you ever go up against a King Gleeok, good luck. Those things are tough. Speaking of tough, I can't forget the scariest new boss of them all, the Gloom Hands and the Phantom Ganon. The first time I encountered these, I thought to myself, neat, the Floor Masters and Wall Masters are back. Then it started moving erratically at me and I was like, not neat, not neat, not neat, not neat! I have yet to come up with a better strategy to fight these Gloom Hands other than just riddling it with bombs or spin attacking erratically. Both strategies seem to work, as bad as they are, but your reward for fighting them is to then turn right around and fight Phantom Ganon, which honestly is a much easier fight. Time your dodges and flurry rush him and he goes down without much of a problem. Now, like I said at the top of the video, I did not fight all the Gloom Hands, and that's because the game doesn't really track which ones you've killed, unlike the previously mentioned ones which will show you you've defeated them if you return to them later. You also get nothing for fighting all the Gloom Hands, as opposed to the others where you get medals. Yay, thanks. Well, at least the fight themselves were fun. Dang, Klubb, that sucks that you didn't even get a fabric. Was there anything else like that in the game? Oh, you better believe it, Amos.
What?
There are 3 that I can think of off the top of my head. First, there's the recipes. This was actually the last thing I did because I knew it wouldn't take long and required minimal grinding. Funny enough, the thing I had to grind for the most was rice, and you can really only get those at 2 stores, so that's annoying. But yeah, your reward for getting all the recipes? Getting to see the number say 228 out of 228. Real glad that I did that. Totally not a waste of my time. Second thing I can think of are the wells. You see, there's this side quest you can get where a local well enthusiast. Okay, very funny, Future Klubb. No. Well enthusiast is going around trying to find every well and will happily pay you for all 58 you find. So that in of itself is pretty good, not great since it's only 580 rupees, but it's something. You also get whatever's inside the well too, which usually isn't much. Might be a person with a quest or some items or creatures, not a whole lot. But your reward for finding all of them? Ah, a snow globe. At least let me put it in my house. Last, and you all knew this was coming, the Koroks. I hate these little guys so much. I know they mean you no harm, but this is the second time I found all of them and the second time I've questioned my existence on this earth. Credit where credit is due, these Korok puzzles are much better this go around, with some of the better ones returning. Let's quickly go through all the ones I can remember off the top of my head. Pattern matching, which is where you put a rock where a rock isn't, picking up a suspicious rock, blow a medallion and catch it, pull a quirk out with a lot of force, play Tetris with cubes, offer something something to the statues, jump in the lily pads, break a tiny, usually hidden pot, follow the butterflies or dust or whatever, complete a time trial,
Break the targets!
fix the roof for the statues, follow the row of flowers, and help the separated Koroks. A lot of those aren't that bad, with the most notorious one being the separated Koroks, which thankfully is made easy with the hover bike, and even better, they give you 2 Korok seeds when you complete them, which is just the best. But what do you get for doing all of them? Please, Hetsu, please give me something good. It's more poop. It's the same poop. It's poop. It's the poop, but it's taller. Why? Why do I do this to myself? It wasn't worth it. At least you do get your inventory expanded for the first 400 Korok seeds, and having as many weapons as possible is a must with the weapon durability. When the game first came out, I heard a lot of complaints about the durability, and I'm gonna be honest, I kinda like it. It forces me to not get attached to certain weapons and to constantly try new things. I will say that I was a bit upset that the upheaval caused all of the weapons on land to become decayed, but this just forces you to fuse weapons, which honestly makes them better. And if you're still not satisfied, you can go get undecayed weapons down in the depths. On top of that, every weapon has a special attribute. Some weapons do more damage under special conditions, like flurry rushes, or some may just be a glass cannon. Or one of my favorites, the Forest Dweller set allows you to recharge an item that is attached to it so that it has more than one use. So something like the Dazzle Fruit is perfect for fighting skeleton versions of enemies because you'll swing once and they'll all die immediately. This is the second time I've mentioned the Dazzle Fruit, but you may have noticed there are a ton of different new items in the game just like the Dazzle Fruit. Most of their intended purposes are for you to attach them to a weapon or arrow, but they'll all have varying effects. The Muddle Bud, for instance, will confuse enemies and make them attack each other, or the Puff Shroom will make a cloud of smoke for you to sneak around. But some items will just help you out in the world, like Pine Cones, which you can now add to fires to make the fire bigger and give you an updraft to reach high places. I love that they added stuff like this. It makes the world feel much more alive and leans heavily into allowing you to use your imagination more. Except for the new bomb flowers, which I just use haphazardly because I want that enemy or rock to just go away, please. But with all of these new items and weapons, you need a good playground to test them out. And what better place to test them out than the new and improved dungeons? I am so unbelievably excited to talk about the dungeons in this game. I have been racking my brain ever since I went through the first dungeon to the moment I am speaking these words into my microphone. The dungeons are a super important part to any Zelda game in my opinion, and Breath of the Wild royally screwed that up. I hated everything about those dungeons. The lead up to the dungeons were better than the dungeons themselves, and I gotta stop myself or else I'll just go on another rant. So let's start with this up front. Are these better than Breath of the Wild? Yes. Are they better than any other Zelda game? Collectively, no. They got some things right, but some of that heart is still missing. Alright, back up. Let's dissect this first. The Dungeons and Tears is described as phenomenon. Basically, bad, weird things are happening in the major regions, and it's up to you to help out and fix their problems in an effort to find Zelda. At a glance at the new dungeons, you can immediately tell that a lot more of the Zelda charm went into the creation of these dungeons. In Breath of the Wild, every dungeon was aesthetically a giant shrine with one real touch of flavor coming from the music. Thankfully in Tears, the design of every dungeon is completely unique in every way imaginable. The same can be said for all the new dungeon bosses. In Breath of the Wild, the dungeon bosses shared their copy-pasted fate with the dungeon they were associated with, meaning each one was essentially the same except fire or water or wind or it was incredibly boring. This has been completely resolved in Tears as well, with each boss having a completely fun design both in appearance and gameplay. I think the only thing that really upset me about the bosses was that I felt that they were just too easy. However, on my second playthrough where I kinda rushed it, they felt a lot more challenging. So it might have been that I was just a little too overpowered in my first playthrough since I was doing absolutely everything. However, I would still love it if Nintendo added a master mode to this game similar to Breath of the Wild, but who knows, maybe someday. Another new addition to the dungeons is that you'll now be accompanied by a companion. I absolutely adore this. I don't think it was inherently necessary, but it's a welcome addition nonetheless. Gives me fond memories of playing through Wind Waker. In fact, a lot of these dungeons have quite a few nods to Wind Waker I noticed, but we'll talk about those and the companions in detail here in a bit. The last general similarity all these dungeons have is the puzzle structure, and unfortunately the structure is the same as Breath of the Wild. I was pretty bummed to see that they were still doing dungeons like this, but I guess if you're making a non-linear game, then the dungeons have to be as well, which I don't exactly agree with. And I'm probably only saying that because I hate the structure, but it just isn't as exciting to me. In older Zelda games, it felt like the dungeons were the main point of the game, and the world was just an outlet for you to get to more dungeons. But now with these games, it feels the other way around. We used to have these intricate puzzle boxes that worked like Metroidvanias. You need this key, but you can't get that key without this item, and you can't get that item without this key, and so on and so on. You can get into these dungeons and it's like, welcome to the dungeon. There are 4 or 5 puzzles you get to do neatly marked on your map. If you solve all of the puzzles, you win. It still has that 4 shrines duct taped together feel, and it just doesn't feel good. It's unfortunate because I believe we're going to be stuck going in this direction for a while, but I don't think there's anything I can do except move on and accept that we won't get clever puzzle box dungeons from Nintendo ever again. Who knows, they may surprise me, but for now, let's talk about these dungeons one by one in the order I believe Nintendo wanted you to solve them in. First up is the Wind Temple. The phenomenon that's affecting this dungeon is a never-ending blizzard that's pummeling the Rito tribe, heavily affecting their food supply. Your companion for this dungeon is Tulin, the son of Teba. With each of these companions, you also gain the ability to activate them to use an ability to help you traverse or fight. For Tulin, his ability is that if you are gliding or you just go up and talk to him, you can have him launch a horizontal gust of wind to give you a boost to reach stuff. Think of it like a horizontal Rivali's Gale. It's also worth noting that the companion's abilities are also the thing that activates all the switches in the dungeon, so they are 100% required for you to even think about doing the dungeon. This particular dungeon is a beautiful introduction to the type of dungeons you're going to be exploring. The build-up as you ascend higher and higher into the clouds, getting closer and closer to the giant cloud that holds the source of this wicked blizzard. The music getting stronger and stronger and more evil sounding as you propel yourself higher and higher before you're above the cloud line and you can see it. The Wind Temple. Such a beautiful build-up leading to a pretty solid dungeon. Even though all the puzzles are separated and don't work with one another, some of them are very clever. There's a couple towards the bottom of the dungeon that has you using ice picks in a clever way to grab chests and crank gears. It's stuff like this that I love. The game never explicitly showed you how to do any of this or to use the ice picks, but as you were climbing up here, or even as you got in, you had to interact and use these ice picks to either get them out of the way or to use them for switches. The game teaches you without you even realizing you're being taught, and that right there is good game design. But at the peak of all this is your first look at your true Zelda boss, Kolgera. This thing is an on-the-nose nod of Molgera from Wind Waker, and I love it so much. This fight is honestly one of the best bosses in the game, purely for its music alone. I'd love to play some of it here, but Nintendo would sue me for my entire bank account sum of $19.86, so I encourage you to look it up later when you get a chance. When I first fought this thing, I was just spamming it with a ton of arrows, which does work, but it ends the fight in an instant. If you want to do this the epic way, you can dive through its weak points, which is so much more satisfying and makes the fight that much more epic. After you defeat any boss, you're rewarded with the ability to summon an avatar of the companion you had with you to use in the overworld, which is such a great idea. But I have feelings about how they implemented all these companions, so we'll dive into more of that when we talk about the rest of them. After the blizzard has dispersed, it's time to head over to see the Gorons. And to be honest, in Breath of the Wild, the Gorons were my least favorite, and that doesn't really change it all much here, especially since Yunobo's still around. Still don't really like him all that much, Goro. But once you arrive to Goron City, you come to find out that all the Gorons are suffering from an allegory for a crack addiction, and I think that is hilarious. Everyone except my good man Jeeves over here. On top of that, Yunobo has become a luchador and in turn has become a jerk to everyone in Goron City. Okay, the luchador thing isn't actually a thing, but he was given this mask from the totally real Zelda, and it's essentially hypnotizing him. So we gotta beat it out of him with one of the worst Zelda boss fights ever with one of the worst Zelda characters ever. After you free him from his curse, you get him as a companion. His ability is to launch himself at objects and explode. He can do this on the ground or from any vehicle you control, which leads into the first part of the lead up to the dungeon, where you have to climb all the way up to the top of Elden Volcano, where you're then ambushed by a mini-boss, Moragia. This boss is more spectacle than actual threat, but its real purpose is to teach you Yunobo's ability, so it gets a pass in that case. But it would have been pretty neat if it was an actual challenge. After defeating him, you jump into the volcano that leads to the depths, which in turn leads to the hidden underground fire temple. Now, this dungeon is exactly what I wanted. You're given this rail system you need to follow, and at every stop, you need to solve a puzzle to get one step closer to getting to the boss. It's still not exactly linear, but it's a small step in being something that could be linear. But because it's not exactly linear, it's entirely too easy to cheese with something like the hover bike or Ascend, and that's exactly what I saw the internet do. I saw them give up trying and then just pulled out the hover bike and rode it to each of the individual spots, and then they had the audacity to say that this dungeon sucks. I couldn't figure it out, so I just flew to everything. Couldn't figure it out? It's literally on rails! What do you mean you couldn't figure it out? And like, I get it, use what the game gives you, but this is just a stepping stone for a huge overlapping problem this game has. Because players are just skipping your well-made dungeon, they aren't flexing their brain at all, and there's little to no satisfaction with completing the dungeon. People are getting different experiences, which, don't get me wrong, that's great, but some of these people are getting worse experiences, and it makes me so sad. One of my favorite moments of dungeons is the aha moment you get when you finally figure it out. But if everyone is just skipping over that part, they're getting nothing out of the dungeon and are left with the impression of, that dungeon sucked and it wasn't fun. It was fun! Did you even try? Did you try at all? Did you just walk up to the front of the dungeon and just shut your brain off? Sorry, as you can tell, this drives me nuts. I want to think. I want to be challenged. I want to have fun. If your idea of having fun is skipping the fun, then by all means. Oh, alright, sorry, I'm done. This dungeon's not that bad. Anyways, the boss for this area is pretty meh. It's a play on Gohma called, get this, Marbled Gohma. The idea of using Yunobo to launch him across the room to break up the beast is pretty cool, but overall this boss didn't excite me as much as the dungeon itself. After all the Gorons go cold turkey, it's time to swim on over to the Zoro's domain that's suffering from sludge dropping from the sky and mucking everything up. Don't you hate it when something mucks up your day? Well, my mucking day got a lot better when I finally got to meet with the best fish boy in the whole wide world, Sidon. With his ability, you can create yourself a little water bubble shield and then attack with it for increased damage. Man, I love the Zoro so much. A calm feeling went all over me when I saw Sidon again. It was like seeing your best friend again after you graduated high school. It was so good to see him. Then I found out he was engaged. Aw, my fish boy. Gonna be completely honest here, I did not trust Yona when I was introduced to her. Something about her just felt incredibly off to me. Felt like she was plotting to overthrow the Zoro domain or something. But no, she was completely chill. Still don't trust her, but she can stay. For now. With the help of Sidon, you go on a mini fetch quest for information on how to stop the sludge until you find a pathway to an underground water cavern. I was stoked! Oh boy, an underground water dungeon? No, it's... well, I mean, it is an underwater cavern system, but it's not the actual dungeon. It's just a means to get you to the dungeon in the sky. It's a bit sad too, because it has this really dark and ominous atmosphere, and the music is so chill but scary at the same time. It's so much of what I wanted in a dungeon, and unfortunately, this is the best part of the water temple. Once you actually make your way to the water temple, you're met with what is assumed to be your first encounter with low gravity. This mechanic is the only thing that keeps the water temple from being almost completely unfun. You have all these really cool water ideas like waterfalls and water bubbles, but the puzzles suck and can be completed in seconds. Heck, this one is just you jumping in slow motion. That's the whole puzzle. I'm not too sure what happened here because I felt like there was so much more they could have done with the low gravity, but they completely dropped the ball in my opinion. And they didn't do themselves any favors with this dungeon's boss, Mucktorok. The idea is that it'll create patches of muck to slow you down, but it was really never a problem since you have Sidon at your side. So all you do is hit him with Sidon and well on him and just repeat that until he dies. An okay idea, but nowhere near as fun as I was hoping it would be. They really mucked this one up. After you stop the Zoro domain from the muckening, it's time to head to Gerudo Town and help with their... where is everyone? Hello? Is anyone here? Yeah, so everyone is hiding underground because this entire area was hit with a devastating sandstorm. I know, real original. Oh, even worse! Gibdos! I can't believe they brought Gibdos back! As terrifying as they aren't as much as a threat to you per se, but they're even weaker to your companion Riju, with her ability to strike lightning wherever you shoot an arrow. Riju is probably the most useful combat companion, as you can do a massive amount of AoE damage if you hit your shots right. After helping her defend the town from the Gibdos, Riju sends you on a hunt to find a hidden temple, following these towers and getting their lights to line up to one another to form a triangle. Another really nice nod to Wind Waker. Doing so causes the lightning temple to rise from the ground, almost ready to explore. But first we have to clear out this nest on the front, and oh my gosh, they put the boss in at the very beginning of the dungeon? I was not expecting that! You don't actually get to do the whole fight here, but this boss reveal completely caught me off guard, since they haven't done something like this in a Zelda game where you see the boss before the fight since, I think, Minish Cap? I might be wrong about that. Either way, after the boss goes to the end of the dungeon, we get to explore what is possibly the best dungeon in the whole game. Before you even get to the dungeon proper, you get to go through these long, dimly lit corridors and something reminiscent of something from Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time, or better yet, the Arbiter's Grounds from Twilight Princess. Once you actually get to the puzzles, they're actually quite cleverly done, since they brought back the return of a classic puzzle, the light puzzles. Throughout this entire dungeon, they are used to make certain lights that you would use on one puzzle work for your progression of another puzzle, and this is the kind of stuff I like to see. It's not exactly what I want, but it's the absolute closest we're going to get. But even still, this one could definitely compete with some actually proper Zelda dungeons. It's got fun and lengthy puzzles, and look, it's even got the mirror shield. Kinda. It just feels like a good Zelda dungeon. At first I thought it was possible to skip the first part of the dungeon by ascending, but I later learned that you're forced to do it because you have to guide Riju through it. No skipping that, you cheaters. Gotta finish it properly. This dungeon is just all around perfect for the type of world and structure the devs had set in place. Even the boss is great. Queen Gibdo is a pretty memorable and challenging fight. Every time I fought this boss, either in the main quest or in the depths, I've seemed to struggle just a little bit, and that's a good thing. That's what I want. But you know what's even cooler? That's not even the last dungeon. I know, that's awesome, right? I was so happy to see that this game doesn't just end after 4 dungeons like it does in Breath of the Wild. In fact, there's a lot more. After you've done the 4 phenomenon, you go to talk to Purah, who informs you that she saw the totally for real Zelda up at Hyrule Castle, and that you should go check it out. Doing just that leads on a wild goose chase where you keep going after Zelda, but wave after wave of monsters keep appearing. You fight your way through and finally make it to Zelda, only to find out that, uh-oh, it wasn't actually Zelda, it was Ganondorf pretending to be Zelda. I completely never saw that coming. Ganondorf has his phantom counterparts fight you, and just before the fight gets too difficult, all of your companions come into your aid. With Ganondorf temporarily gone, Purah finds out that there's a 5th companion, or in the story's case, a 5th sage, that we have to find, and that we should go talk to the Zonai research team in Kakariko to find some answers. This leads to a rather lengthy quest where you have to find these garments that help you clear the clouds and thunderstorm that is plaguing Thunderhead Island, where the 5th sage is supposed to be. You clear the way and make your way to the top, navigating through the treacherous thunderstorm and making your way all the way to the end, where you find a Zonai head that has you bring it back to the surface, that then unlocks a path to the depths, in turn unlocking the 5th and final dungeon, the Zonai Construction Factory, also known as the Spirit Temple. This got me so excited when I was playing. I was totally under the impression that I was done with the game after the 4th dungeon, and to find out that there's a 5th hidden one that only opens up after completing everything else made me... Wait, what's that? You can just stumble across the dungeon by blindly flying into Thunderhead Island? No! Okay. Alright, okay, I gotta admit, that's pretty cool, but come on. You missed out completely on the buildup if you do that. I tried this in my second playthrough just to see what happens, and after you do it and you go back and talk to Purah, she's just like, what? There's a 5th sage and you didn't tell us? Well, I guess go kill Ganondorf now or whatever. I just, for as great as a game as it is, it just keeps beating me down. Let's actually talk about the Spirit Temple. The idea here is that you are building a construct and you need to go find 4 of its pieces and bring them back to put it together, which that is a cool idea. No button or concept of button, just figure out how to bring object from point A to point B without losing it, and that's nice. Some of these puzzles are pretty challenging too. I had to really think for a couple of them, and it was honestly kind of refreshing, even though some of my ideas were completely stupid. But after you get all of the pieces for the construct, you get to control it and take it to the boss area. And at first, this seemed like a really cool idea. A mech that you get to control and put whatever weapons you want on it? That's crazy. Then you try using the thing and you realize how slow and cumbersome it is. I feel like it would have been a lot easier to just walk and attack on your own. Either that or I just didn't fully grasp the usefulness of the construct. Once you bring the construct to where it needs to be, you get to fight what is most likely the worst dungeon boss in this game. It's a construct versus construct ring out match. Not too exciting, unfortunately. Yet again, might have something to do with the weird way the construct works, but the construct isn't the only thing that works weirdly. Pretty much all of the companions are the same way. I waited to talk about this now because I wanted to talk about what all of the other companions do first. While I enjoy the idea of having companions fight with you and the idea of having new abilities to use when they're in your party, the implementation is actually garbage. In order to use one of their abilities, you have to physically walk up to one and press A. And while that sounds easy enough, their AI is kinda screwy. When they're not busy staring at an enemy and hitting it once, they like to just straight up run away from you, causing you to have to chase them down in order to activate their ability. But you might accidentally press A on someone else and completely waste their ability. It's a really dumb system that I think could have easily been fixed by some sort of button combination, like holding trigger down and pressing X or something like that. I have no idea why they went the route they did, but it was ultimately the cause for me to completely abandon my companions after beating the game, since they were more trouble than it was worth. Except for Tulin, his ability actually triggers in the air without you having to be facing him, essentially making him the only good sage. And while we're talking about these guys, is it me or do their abilities suck compared to Breath of the Wild? I think that's the one thing that I can say Breath of the Wild had right that Tears of the Kingdom dropped the ball on. Pretty much all of these abilities suck except for Tulin's, and he wishes his could be like Rivali's Gale. But enough about all that. Let's wrap up the Spirit Temple. What is your reward for coming all the way here other than obtaining a useless companion? Well, you get a huge update to the story. You're shown this absolutely stunning cutscene that depicts Rauru sacrificing himself to stop Ganondorf so that Link can face him once and for all. Usually at the end of all the other dungeons, you get these ultra similar cutscenes where sages of the past explain to your companions and soon-to-be new sages what had transpired. But there's only so many times I can hear,
Demon King? Secret Stone? Demon King. Secret Stone.
Secret Stone? Demon King? Psycho Mantis.
before I go insane. So it was really nice to get to the end of the Spirit Temple and get a pretty substantial uplift and conclusion to the outcome of the imprisoning war. But wait, back up. We haven't even talked about the story at all. I can tell you right now, it's way more impactful and well written than Breath of the Wild's, but it will only make sense if we go back to the beginning. As the game opens up, we're shown the story scene that started it all, the bit from the first teaser trailer where Link and Zelda are exploring below Hyrule Castle. I'm already excited. It seems like they're actually going to try and give us a decent story this time around. We explore further and further, learning of the Demon King, the Zonai, and the Imprisoning War, a war that I'm almost 100% sure isn't the same one mentioned in A Link to the Past. As we go further and further down, the music is building higher and louder as we see him. The Demon King, Ganondorf. A secret stone holding him back falls, and Zelda picks it up. The seal has been broken, and he is given life again. He attacks Zelda and Link, shattering the Master Sword in the process. Ganondorf launches Hyrule Castle into the sky, causing chasms to form and sky islands to plummet. This event becomes known as the Upheaval. Zelda, unable to keep her balance, falls into a hole. Link, injured, jumps after Zelda, but she is just out of reach, and Link fails to grab her. Zelda mysteriously disappears, and Link is given a hand out of the cave from the mysterious hand that was holding back Ganondorf. The hand grafts itself to Link to heal his injuries, and this hand just so happens to belong to a friendly Zonai named Rauru. This puts us at exactly the moment that you get to explore the game. But Who is Rauru? Well, Zelda has managed to accidentally enhance her light powers and dormant time powers with the secret stone she obtained. Doing so at the exact moment she fell launched her so far back in time that she landed in Hyrule during the time of its founding. And who's there to witness this extraordinary feat but the king and queen of Hyrule, Rauru and Sonia, the ones who founded Hyrule. Queen Sonia and goat dad Rauru are just as bewildered as Zelda is as to how she got there in the first place. So they decide to ask Raru's sister and last remaining Zonai, Minoru. And I gotta say, I love all three of these characters so much. At first I was a little put off by a goat man, since that's a new one for Zelda, but these three are just so loving and kind, and I just want to give them all a big group hug. And going back to the story, all of them desperately want to help Zelda in any way they can, but unfortunately, it's simply beyond anything they can do. The best that they can do is try to assist Zelda in learning her newfound time abilities in a hope of her getting good enough with them to send herself back home. It's here where we learn a little bit more about the secret stones. They had mentioned them earlier, but essentially the Zonai were a bunch of godlike beings that came to Hyrule and gifted them these secret stones. The secret stones have the ability to amplify the user's already given talent. It doesn't give the user talent, and it also can't tell from good or evil. In that regard, it's pretty similar to the Triforce, except the Triforce has a great name and the secret stones sound like they asked Billy from kindergarten to come up with a cool sounding item in a video game. While Zelda is trying to figure out a way to go home, everyone from that time is having to deal with Matt Mercer, I mean Ganondorf, who, you guessed it, is doing a naughty and trying to take over Hyrule. He learns that he could get his hands on the secret stone to amplify his power in an attempt to take over Hyrule, hatches a plan. He sets out a fake Zelda to lure Sonia alone, and although she was very aware that that was not the real Zelda, she was still caught off guard, and Ganondorf murders her in cold blood, stealing her secret stone. Everyone mourns the loss of sweet Sonia and prepares to go to war against Ganondorf. Rauru gifts the remaining secret stones to 4 sages to help in combat against Ganondorf, and thus the imprisoning war begins. The war is long and fierce, and even though it's 7 against 1, Ganondorf is impossible to defeat. In an effort to temporarily stop Ganondorf, Rauru sacrifices himself in the most epic way possible so that when the time comes, Link can finish off Ganondorf.
Interesting. I look forward to meeting you.
And there he lay, stuck down there, for thousands and thousands of years. A little bit before the imprisoning war, thanks to Link, the Master Sword was able to transcend time and make its way back to Zelda. Zelda, now in possession of the Master Sword, hatches a plan. First, she visits the sages of their respective region and informs them all of Link and asks for their passed on help to the sages of Link's time. Second, she confides in Minoru her plan and asks for her help. Minoru doesn't agree with the last step of her plan, but begrudgingly agrees, not seeing any other alternative. Minoru passes her soul onto the Purapad using her secret stone. This is so the Purapad can be kept in safekeeping and later passed on to Link when it reaches his time. Lastly, Zelda must repair the Master Sword, but she doesn't have enough power, unless she does the unthinkable. Zelda swallows her secret stone. To swallow a secret stone is to become an immortal dragon, one blessed with eternal life. To become an immortal dragon is to lose oneself. Zelda, at a complete loss, sacrifices her mind and body to become a dragon so that she can pass the Master Sword to Link in the present. A dragon, mind you, that has been in the game the entire time, and you had absolutely no idea that it was Zelda. Makes this part of the game even worse, huh? Now that we have all the information we need, it's time to go pull the Master Sword, and the most beautiful Master Sword pulling in any Zelda game, and then it's time to go mess up Ganondorf. In Breath of the Wild, the way they quote-unquote reward you for helping all the champions is by making the boss easier, which sucked. Instead, what they do here is first, the companions actually help you fight off an entire army's worth of enemies. Second, they hold back any boss rematch fight you would have had, similar to Breath of the Wild. And third, they actually have them come in and help with the final fight instead of the game just knocking off half the health. And what a final fight with Ganondorf this is. The buildup is intense and the battle against his army is epic, and the actual fight against him is sinister, exciting, and so much fun. He works pretty similarly to how Phantom Ganons fight you, except he's got a few new moves and can pull out some different weapons at any time to switch out his style. And on top of him doing gloom damage to you, he can also perfect dodge you, just like you can to him. And I literally pogged when I saw him do that. It would have been pretty cool if he also flurry rushed you, but that might have been a step too much. After the first phase of your battle against him, he levels up, and when I say level up, I mean he gets so much health. Oh my gosh! It's like they heard me complaining about them taking away the health in Breath of the Wild, so they just took it, brought it into this game, and went whoop. Not only does he have a ton of health, but he also gets a whole gang of Phantom Ganons to help him. But never fear, your companions are here to help fight them off while you focus on Ganondorf. Everything is going pretty good until you reach the halfway point and he gets super mad. He casts your friends away, and now it's time for a one-on-one battle. Except this time, his attacks will permanently decrease your heart containers. What? I love this. This is such a great idea. I kinda wish I wasn't so powered up though when I did this, because when I was fighting him, it wasn't that scary because I had so many hearts. But either way, this fight is fantastic from beginning to end. But it's not over yet. Ganondorf won't go down that easily, and he decides to do something that I should have expected, but I certainly wasn't ready for. He swallows his secret stone. Ganondorf explodes in a burst of rage and turns into a dragon, launching you into the sky. But how are you going to fight him while he's in this form? Here comes Zelda, ready to help you take down Ganondorf once for all in a dragon-on-dragon battle. This fight is definitely more show than an actual challenge, but it's just too epic and perfect for me to care about the difficulty at this point. I'm flying through the sky with Dragon Zelda, with my heart racing and the music blaring. I'm too excited! You wound Ganondorf little by little, and with a final push of the Master Sword, you impale his secret stone and vanquish the evil and wicked Demon King, Ganondorf. Ganondorf has been destroyed. In that instance, your hand starts to glow and you see before you the spirit of Sonia and Rauru. They've come to assist you one last time. Channeling their abilities through Link, they are able to finally turn Zelda back to how she used to be. Link awakes to a familiar scene. He's falling and Zelda is just out of reach. You dive down faster and faster, and finally, after all this time, you finally catch Zelda. You have found Princess Zelda. I love this story. It's so beautiful and epic, and I'm so glad that you can tell that they actually put a lot of effort into telling a wonderful story. But you can literally ruin it at every single step of the way. First, there's the memories, which yet again can be viewed in any random order that you find them in. I mentioned in the bit picking video that there is an order, and you can see it in the cave where you get this quest. But do you honestly think that anyone is going to notice that or take the time to mark them down and watch them in the order unless someone told them? You know what order I saw them in before someone told me?
My name is Sonia.
Yeah, pretty cool, right? I found out she died on literally the second memory I saw. Personally feel like this is a super easy fix. Just have the memories play in order as you get them. That's it. That's all you have to do. You'd have to come up with a better way to find them, but if you just do it like that, people will be able to see the beautiful story you crafted as it's intended to be seen. But that's not the only thing. You can also get the Master Sword early, which completely destroys the emotional impact of Zelda's sacrifice. You can just be like, oh, cool, new dragon, I'm gonna fly up to it. Why's the Master Sword here? That's Zelda? The shock is there, sure, but the emotional weight of slowly finding out what she's going to do and why is so much better than you literally getting spoiled by just playing the game. The same goes for Minoru in the Spirit Temple. Because you can just stumble upon the dungeon, that also means that you can stumble upon Minoru and her awesome cutscene explaining the imprisoning war without context of who she is or why she just helped. Listen, Zelda fans and players alike, I think this is going to slowly poison everyone's taste for these games. A large majority of the Zelda fans were crying after Skyward Sword for something that wasn't linear. Nintendo heard you and answered the call by delivering the most non-linear game they could possibly make without causing traditional Zelda fans to riot. But the game was non-linear to a fault. Its Zelda image was a bit mucky, so they polished it up, and this is the game we got. A game with a much clearer image of what remains of the Zelda formula, while leaving in all the non-linear bits that were plaguing Breath of the Wild. And here's the thing, if you're like me and you want more of that Zelda goodness to shine through, it's not gonna happen. Breath of the Wild sold 32 million copies, and as of the writing of this video, Tears of the Kingdom has sold 18 million copies. That's a little more than 30% of the sales made on the entire Zelda franchise. That includes all other 17 main games and their remakes. Nintendo is not changing courses, and Eiji Aonuma even said so himself in an interview with Game Informer. Quote, "Yeah, I think it's correct to say that Breath of the Wild, has created a new kind of format for the series to proceed from. I think that's a really important point. Even if a game like Breath of the Wild has really big changes in it, fans and the players are able to feel that this is a Zelda game at its core when they play the game. That is something that is really important for us with meeting fans' expectations." And I don't think he's inherently wrong about it being a Zelda game at its core. It is. I still love this game to death, but just like any other game, if I see an issue that really bothers me, I feel the need to bring it up so that it's addressed in the future. And out of anything, I fully believe that these types of games need just a touch more linearity. The Lightning Temple is a great start for linearity in a non-linear game, and I don't think I'm the only one who agrees that it's the best dungeon in the entire game. Open world games are starting to become more and more common, and with that, game developers can either choose to ride the wave or get innovative and create something new entirely. And if there's anything I can count on when it comes to Nintendo, it's breaking the norm and trying something new. My hope is that through Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that they are learning more and more and are sculpting what would soon be the most perfect video game of all time. Breath of the Wild was already really good to a lot of people, but I'm really proud of the team behind Zelda for noticing the problems and addressing them in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, let's step that up a notch. Do it again, please, because even after 250 hours of gameplay, I need more Zelda. I think I'm definitely satisfied with how I feel about this game. After making this video and playing it so much, I think it's safe to say that I prefer the original Zelda formula, but they're so close to winning me over because this game is a gem and I will love it forever. However, after this long video, it's time to make an adjustment. That's right, I can no longer, in good conscience, leave this game in the #1 spot on my ranking, so I'm gonna have to move it down. Not far though, I'm only moving it down to 4, and it's still easily an S tier game. It's gonna take quite a lot for a game to surpass my top 3. And you can check out that ranking list in full, as well as any of my other socials by clicking the link in the description. Also, huge thanks to everyone in my Discord for submitting a video for the bit halfway through the video. And if you want to join us in something like that in the future, hop on over to the Discord server and come hang out with us. I swear we're not all Zelda nerds. And last order of business, if you like this video and you want more, please do me the biggest favor and subscribe and comment so I can feel like I didn't just totally waste my time for making the longest video ever about just one game. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you continue to have a chill day.